After you get to the point where your reed plays and it has structure and symmetry and balance, but you still don't really like it, what do you do then? In this video, I'm going to talk about the super specific tweaks that I'll use not on every reed, but on individual reeds as I react to whatever that cane is actually giving me. Hi, I'm Jennet Ingle, the 5 Minute Reedmaker. In today's video, I'm going to talk about what are you going to do when your reed is like balanced and functioning, but too hard, or too easy, or too sharp, or too flat. I'm going to talk about the individual tricks that I use that I can't promise will actually work on your reed, but they generally work on mine, and they'll give you a little bit of structure and a little bit of guidance. In any of these cases, my first recommendation is put into words what it is you don't like about your reed, and then form a hypothesis as to what to do to work on it. This really obvious step is often overlooked, and if you don't have it, and you just sort of tackle the reed and start scraping randomly, first of all, you may or may not get the result you want, but second of all, you won't learn from the experience and be able to remember next time you have a reed like this, what it was you did and whether it worked or not. So here we go. Too hard is an obvious problem, right? Just take more wood off. But where? When my students complain about the hardness of the reed, I ask them first, how is it too hard? In the response or in the sustain? Even my younger students are able to immediately identify this difference. So I can improve response by scraping in the tip. I can improve resistance by scraping in the heart. So if they say, oh, it's too hard in the sustain, it feels too hard to keep blowing, that's when I scrape in the heart. Or if the reed feels okay, but it doesn't really feel flexible or give enough sound, I can improve the resonance by opening up the windows in the back. If the reed is too easy, there could be a few different factors causing that. Check the crow first to see if there's room to clip. If the crow is at a B or lower, you can start there. Otherwise, you'll be working primarily in the transition between the tip and heart and in the tip itself. You need more stops in the reed to put resistance in. So if the problem is that the heart is too thin, like this thickness here, this diagram, by the way, represents one blade of the reed as it goes from the thick heart here to the thin tip on this side. In every case, that's what's going on. And the line that I'm drawing, the dotted line, is the midline of that reed as we're seeing it from the side. So let's say that your heart is too thin. You really wish it was up here at that like 45, 46, I can't even remember what my number is for the heart, but it just isn't. If that's the case, you need to make everything else thinner to balance. I think I talk about that fairly extensively in my video about the heart. So I would scrape here, I would scrape back in here, and I would leave this area completely alone, hoping that that will come back together, and then clip. If the tip is too thin, like you see here, where there's a nice thick heart, but it comes down and immediately the tip is already at zero and it doesn't continue to get thinner in a sloping way, in a good way. If we don't have, in other words, this kind of good transitional material in the tip, then you might consider stepping that heart back by a millimeter or so. So I would bring this whole thing here and scoop it out so that this area is going to give me that same transitional stuff that we love. I'd do it like so. Bring it back, building that in. Sometimes I'll see very little transition at all between the tip and the heart, like you see here, with no visible stop. And in that case, I'll cut in for sure much harder to give the vibrations a hill to climb on their way into that heart, which is what they need in that case. Too flat can be caused by many things, and as I discussed in my video, the beep and crow, clipping alone is rarely the thing that brings the pitch up. It brings the crow up, which balances the reed better, but the pitch is located somewhere else. I've had a few people ask me about this. The reed is too flat, and they clip, and then the reed is too hard. Well, of course it is. Your response is in the tip, especially the superb thinness at the very tip of the tip, up in here and up in here. And if you shorten the tip, your response goes away. If you want the pitch to come up, you have to rebalance the whole reed. Often a flat reed is caused by not enough structure in the middle. In other words, too thin a heart or not enough strength in the spine. If you can, thin everything on the left and the right, in this area and this area, and certainly over here and here, to let the middle feel a little bit thicker. And then when the crow is low, clip. Sometimes being flat is caused by the whole thing being too long. For example, if you've accidentally placed your rooftop at like 67 or 68, that's a thing that happens for me. Sometimes if I've wound longer, I'll eyeball it from the top of the blank rather than from the bottom of the cane, as I should. And then I'll just set the whole thing too high, and I'll get a finished functioning reed that is super flat because my rooftop is super high. If that's the case, bring it back a millimeter or so. Just go ahead and remake this nice transition and then clip. If you're persistently flat, especially in the higher register like A and B and C above the staff, you might consider a narrower shape on the whole to better hold that pitch up in that register. Even if you only have one shaper and you don't want to get too fussy, you could use a piece of sandpaper and just gently polish the sides up there. Let's see if I have that. I could give an example. So with my piece of extremely fine sandpaper, it's like 1000 grit or so, I can just take my reed, lay it sideways, and bring it back a few times to narrow mostly the area up in here, and that'll really help you to hold your pitch up in that uppermost register. About 1 million different things could cause reeds to be sharp, but here are some different approaches you might try. For consistent sharpness problems, start with the fundamental structure. Make sure your spine is strong enough to hold the reed open. Overly closed reeds do tend to be sharp. Make sure that your rooftop is up at 65 or even 66. If mine gets down to 64, I definitely go very, very sharp. You can't fix that, of course, on your individual reed, the one you're holding, but at least you'll know what went wrong. Similarly, a slightly wider shape, especially in the belly area, like so, or winding your existing shaped cane a little bit shorter might give you some extra room at the throat and help to lower pitch. So, as you can easily imagine, on this piece of folded cane, you can see how narrow it gets as you go down. If you're winding at 73 or 74, like I do, you've got about this much cane at the throat. So it can only get so, it can only have so much openness. The shorter you wind, the more physical cane there is to close right at the top of the tube, and so the more openness you've got right there. If you do wind shorter though, make sure that you still place your rooftop at the same measurement, your same 65 or 66. Don't get tricked into putting it lower down just because the whole thing looks a little shorter. So that's a fundamental fix, but on the level of an individual reed, sometimes the reed sits sharp if it's too hard. In that case, make sure that you're really cleaning out these rooftop areas, and don't be afraid to polish the heart pretty substantially as you finish the reed. I will frequently work right behind the heart at the top of the windows in this area and really dig in to make a pretty deep hole behind the heart. Sometimes, and this is crazy, I will then take a step into the center of the heart, right in there, from the bottom, like entry steps into a swimming pool, like I don't really do it like steps. I just cut in a big hole right there. I have no idea why that works. It seems to break all of the structural rules we know and love by gutting the very center of the reed. And it can have a collapsing effect if you do it too much or you take it to the extreme. But I have found it to drop the pitch dramatically with few side effects. So I use that relatively frequently since discovering it. Sometimes the reed sounds sharp if it's actually flat, but you yourself are subconsciously compensating by voicing it up. After a very short time doing this, you can get too fatigued to control the situation very well, and the reed goes irredeemably sharp. I call this phenomenon flarp, and it can be surprisingly tricky to recognize. Try playing the reed without any embouchure on it, like out of the corner of your mouth, and see where its pitch falls when you're not holding on. If this is the case, if your reed is flat but you're playing it sharp, I would clip, or rebalance and clip, just like you did for a flat reed. I find that I'm actually the most comfortable playing down to pitch if my reed is a little tiny bit on the high side. Okay, this has been a lot of details. Has it been helpful to you? This has been a 5-minute Reedmaker lesson. You can follow these short videos right here on YouTube. You can subscribe if you wish. If you have questions or concerns or you want to order reeds or cane, you can find me at jennetingle.com. In fact, I'd love to hear what else I can help you with and what my next short video should address. Let me know. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.